Set in the bleak landscape of post-World War London, a time of despair and suffering amidst the Spanish flu outbreak that ravaged much of Europe, Dr. Jonathan Reid, a war veteran and blood transfusion specialist, awakens a vampire and his desire to help people confronts his newly found bloodlust. This is Vampyr, a delicious setting for a gothic horror title with action, RPG and detective influences. It finds its way onto the Nintendo Switch this Halloween, a perfect time for this port, but is it horrifying or love at first bite? I'm James Amero here at SwitchWatch. Let's jump in and find out.
Another corpse. Have the very streets of London become a mausoleum?
As a game that started out life on other platforms, it's worth talking about the port briefly and the game's performance. The port to the Switch has been handled by Saber Interactive, who did such fine work with Project Red's The Witcher 3, and it's a straight port. Nothing has been added or removed. Of course, on the Switch you could play the game in handheld mode, but apart from that there is no additional content here. It's fair to say that when originally released on other platforms, performance was one of the factors holding the game back. Long loading times, frame rate dips and the odd bug plagued the otherwise solid experience. These issues have made their way onto the Nintendo Switch but are no worse. When docked, things run fairly smoothly, but like on other consoles, the occasional dip in frame rate pops up. On the move, everything looks a little bit muddy, but given the game's gloomy setting, it doesn't hugely impact your experience. Long loading times, however, are frustrating. As you run around between areas, the game will seem to randomly stop and load. Again, this isn't worse on this platform, but it's certainly not better. With all of that said, the game looks gorgeous on the Switch and overall it's a fantastic port. Very little is lost in the transition across, and it's great to see another ambitious title make its way onto Nintendo's platform. It's just a shame that some of the performance issues were not rectified when making the Switch. Straight out of the gates, the game throws you into an immersive post-war London that feels alive. Awakening as a vampire feels frantic, and the opening scene sets a dark tone that I don't want to spoil with details here. Your character, Dr. Jonathan Reid, suffers from a dilemma that dictates the entire experience. As a doctor, you are driven to save the citizens from the grip of the flu epidemic, and as a vampire, you are cursed to feed on those you have vowed to heal. As you progress, you are thrust into the city's underbelly and a strange supernatural world full of terrors. The story is rather linear and well fleshed out. The game's main scenes are suitably morbid and gothic. It's a credit to the writers and voice actors how thoroughly I enjoyed exploring this tale, but what really makes the story exceptional is how lived in and detailed the city is. Whilst the main story is linear, the world is open and you can explore it at your own pace. You will meet many people from all walks of life, and interacting with them, you feel they have a backstory, a life, and that they have not just been randomly placed there to fill a gap. Remarkably, each character you come across is voice acted and has a wealth of dialogue to discover by interacting with them, healing them and watching their activities from the shadows. The story and gameplay are interlinked in such a way that we don't see from many developers. Only a handful like BioWare do this good of a job. At every turn, we can kill a character to gain experience and become stronger, or save a character to help improve the city. We might save a criminal for them to then go on and do wrong, or stop a nurse from illegal practice only to stop others being healed by her services. These choices affect the game strongly, right up to multiple endings depending on how you choose to play the game. At its core, your aim through this journey is to get to the bottom of how you got turned into a vampire and solve the mysterious voice you can hear from your maker. You set out to find answers and quickly get involved in the flu epidemic and its potential links to the vampiric outbreak as well. The game touches on the topics of racism, same-sex relations, science versus religion, and all manner of intriguing things seen through the lens of Edwardian England. The game starts with you confused and chased off after your first feed by a group of zealous vampire hunters. The first hour or so sees you getting to grips with your condition, backstory and the game's plot, whilst introducing you to the controls, combat and systems. It's well done, revealing a bit more at a time so you can get a feel for the game. The camera is set at a third-person view, giving it an action RPG feel. The controls are mostly quite good and follow a scheme that you'll pick up and feel natural these days. The left stick is used to control Jonathan, whilst the right controls the camera. Pressing the minus button opens up the game's menu or reveals information at certain points. More on that later. And during the combat, you can lock onto targets by pressing the right analog stick. Pushing the right stick left and right switches between targets. You carry a main weapon and an offhand weapon, or alternatively can carry a two-handed weapon. You hit with your main using Y and the offhand using X. Generally, you use a sword, knife, axe or other traditional weapon with your main and have various options in your offhand, from a stake or surgical blood sapper to lots of types of gun. As you would expect as a vampire, you also have a number of skills at your disposal. Typically, you will slash away with your main weapon and use your secondary weapon to stun enemies. When stunned, you can jump in and bite your opponent to recharge your blood meter. These actions take stamina, as does moving, making it a key statistic. Your blood can be used to power vampiric skills that you obtain as you level, and is used much like mana in other games. These are more powerful and are surprisingly varied. You have the ability to create a blood shield, throw spears of blood or blood bombs, through to using a mist form where you appear next to an enemy or get in close and slash opponents with your vampiric claws. Later on, as you level, you will unlock ultimate skills, which are extremely powerful as well. Combat sounds brilliant, but doesn't quite feel as good as it sounds. Generally, it's quite a simple affair. Despite its intricate ingredients, it's not the most fluid. Battles tend to boil down to alternating between your basic attacks and using up your stamina, to refilling your blood meter, using your vampiric skills, and vice versa. Enemies have quite large health bars, so battle can take some time and feel slightly wooden. It's satisfying using your skills, but it's not quite as sharp as it could be.
I follow the scent's trail. Perhaps it will lead me to my assailant.
The game definitely has a fair amount of RPG features to combat. Enemies have resistances to certain types of attack, such as shadow, ranged or melee, though in practice, following your pattern will lead to success. Gaining XP will let you level up and unlock all of these passive and active skills. You can equip 4 at a time, and certain skills work really well together. Outside of battle, you can gain XP through dialogue and doing tasks, but by far the biggest XP to be gained is by feeding on citizens. Each person you interact with is a tantalising meal waiting to be devoured. As you speak to them, you can check out the quality of their blood, which translates directly to how much XP you gain by feasting on them. Here you can see the game's core systems overlap. As you get to meet the city's people and assist them, they become healthier and stronger, improving the quality of their blood and making them even more tempting. The crux of which leads you to decide on whether to become stronger yourself or to help the city heal. Each of the game's 4 districts has an overall health meter that reminds me of the Shadow of Mordor system. Helping citizens through menial tasks or by healing them impacts the whole area, and killing them can send the area into turmoil, which in turn leads to chaos and more enemies in that region. It's a real dilemma and fascinating concept, but the issue with it in practice is that you don't ever need to pick off citizens in order to progress. Yes, it makes it quicker, but the difficulty isn't so hard that it's essential. If this was balanced a bit more towards the hard side, it would have more impact. As it was, I found myself being a helpful doctor and avoided feasting on those who I had begun to build solid relationships with, and I felt I didn't suffer as a result. That said, the game does have a hard mode, which makes things a bit more tricky and that dilemma more of a factor. When not fighting, you're out finding out about the city, getting stuck into the people's problems and solving arguments or mysteries. You will get to the bottom of money going missing at the hospital or find out why people are vanishing from an area. This feels like you're playing L.A. Noire as you pick up clues and spy on people. You have vampiric vision, where everything turns black and white except for the stark bright red of blood spatter and the beating hearts, giving away the location of friends and foes. One nice touch is the ability to spot a citizen with an elevated heart rate and track them to find out what secret activity they are up to, which opens up more dialogue or gains you clues on mysteries. The dialogue really is superb. Characters are not always obvious and can turn out to be good but hide a dark secret or vice versa. It's fascinating, but sadly oftentimes you can cruise through dialogue without many truly tough choices. There are a few, but mostly it's a case of asking around and working your way through the text, which is enjoyable because of the quality of writing and the fact that everything is voice acted, but like with combat, this could have been a little bit tighter. Each day you will sleep in a hideout either in the first area, the Pembroke Hospital, in which you are now employed, or through the game's hideouts where you can rest. Whilst resting, you can trade in your experience points for skills and delve into the game's crafting system. It's nothing revolutionary, but it is well implemented. Throughout the game, you will find a vast amount of ingredients. If you like to look around and collect loot, you won't be disappointed. Some items can be broken down to their core components, and these components are used to make everything from serums that help you heal in battle to upgrading your weapons. You can also make medicine to help cure citizens of ailments like a migraine, fatigue or bronchitis, closing that loop of healing them and improving the health of an area, or cynically making them a tastier meal. After all, who wants to snack on ill meat? The city takes you from the dark and grimy back alleys of Whitechapel, where Jack the Ripper so famously carved up his victims, to the glitzier West End. Between getting lost in supporting London's inhabitants and improving each area's overall health, to roaming the streets to rid it of vampires, vampire hunters and general criminals, you can easily spend plenty of time away from the game's core, but you will need to stick to the script in order to open up areas and progress. Along the journey, you will take on a number of bosses which are gruesome to look at and fun, if a bit tedious to fight. As you progress, you'll be taken deeper into the story and face bigger, badder enemies and likely make a few mistakes along the way. The game features an autosave, stopping you from quitting and doing something again, which I think is a nice touch, adding to that sense of purpose to your every step. One missed feature is fast travel. The lack of one makes for some long journeys that can become a bit annoying later in the game. The gameplay loop isn't perfect, but it's fun, rewarding and interesting to explore, full of grim and gritty scenes as any vampire game should be.
Rational thinking only.
What? Shooting a boy in the middle of the street? Not the best thing to do, wouldn't you say?
What? You saw what happened? Who are you?
What's going on?
The star of the show is the voice acting. Every single character and every single line they say is acted, and generally acted very well. It's impressive, and there must be close to 80 hours of voice dialogue in the game. The voices fit so well. Anthony Howell nails Dr. Reid, and Harry Hayden Patton nails your posh patron Dr. Swansea, but even the lesser characters sound great. I would go so far as to say this is one of the best voice acted games I can remember in a long time. Olivier de Riviere produced the soundtrack, and it's sublime, full of haunting and immersive sounds. The cello and bass flute are used throughout to great effect, and along with the voice work, round out an exceptional audio experience, one of the best you will have the pleasure to hear in any game.
Wait. This one's dressed up fancy. Let's run through his pockets.
Picking the dead's pockets? Are you serious?
I'm a sucker for a dark, gothic game, and as a citizen of London, I find this dark take on the city I live in fascinating. As a night walker, everything is naturally cast in shadows, and not too much detail was lost when moving to the Switch. The result is good. The world itself is full of little details everywhere, from graffiti to broken bottles. Enemies and characters equally are very well produced, though I did notice the level of detail drops off as you move away from the main cast. Jonathan looks great with a lot of detail, as do the main characters, but as you move down the pecking order, details become less polished. On the move, the graphics are not bad at all, but they have that slightly washed out look that you get with porting a high graphical quality game onto the Switch, the trade-off you make in doing so. Coming in at £45 in the UK or $50 in the US for a digital or physical copy makes this an expensive title. Yes, it's a solid port, but there is nothing new to explore here. The main quest will take you a little over 20 hours, and in total you could rack up close to 40 hours of exploring every nook and cranny. You could pick this up on other platforms for under £20, and it's even included in the Xbox Game Pass, making it a really tough sell for anyone with options. It's decent on the go, but for me this is best enjoyed on a TV anyway, and I think, to be honest, it's overpriced, no matter how much I enjoyed the game personally. Vampyr gets a lot right. Its setting, soundtrack and excellent story, supported by a strong cast, are fantastic. Combat and the decisions you make are somewhere in the middle, whilst the value is poor, and there are a fair few performance issues. Nevertheless, overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this game. It's ambitious and stands out for its weaving of elements into a really good experience, and would recommend it to anyone if it goes on sale. And if, like me, you really like gothic games and vampire stories, then go ahead and pick this up now, and you won't be disappointed. Overall, it's a solid 7.5 out of 10. And that's it from me today, everyone. I hope you have enjoyed this review. Let me know your thoughts down below on this game. If you're looking for something a little bit more family friendly this Halloween, then I recommend checking out Luigi's Mansion. Spoiler alert, Jordan is absolutely in love with that one. You can check that out by clicking up at the top right hand side. And finally, if you did enjoy this video, then why not consider subscribing for more reviews like this one, as well as our weekly series. And if you do so, when we get to 50,000 subscribers, we're giving away a Switch Lite to one lucky subscriber. I'm James Amero here at SwitchWatch, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.